and my exam shut off. That's a resource I think is amazing and it's free. Gosh, are you stressed or what leading up to that day? There was a question I truly stared at for 10 or 15 minutes. I was like, I'm gonna run out of time. I just told myself to have faith. You got this. You can do this. I promise you. Hi, I am so excited to finally be able to sit down and make this video for you guys. As you can probably tell by the title, or if you've watched my previous vlog where I documented my entire NCLEX test taking day, I passed my NCLEX, thank God. Oh my gosh, talk about the most stressful time of my entire life, but we'll get into that in a little bit. I want to share with you guys and be open and transparent about two portions of the NCLEX. Number one, I know I vlogged my entire day, but I was in such a weird headspace, and I want to actually tell you exactly what you can expect from the moment you enter the building to take your test, throughout your test, and then after leaving your test. Just a sort of walkthrough to potentially help alleviate any anxiety you have about your test taking day. And then in the next portion, I want to share all the resources that I used to study, exactly how long I studied for, my tips and recommendations, and what I really felt like worked for me and benefited me when I was actually taking the NCLEX. So let's walk through NCLEX test taking day. Obviously, prior to that, you will receive an authorization to test code sent to your email, where you will then schedule your actual NCLEX. You'll pick your location and your time. I personally like to test in the morning, so I scheduled mine at 8 a.m. That morning, I woke up around 4-ish and I went to like a little workout class, and then I had a couple hours to relax after, take a shower, and by the time my test came around, I felt like I was fully awake and ready to take on whatever the day had in store for me. So once you arrive to your testing building, which I would recommend getting there really early. I know a lot of us nursing students already do that, so I don't need to tell you guys that, but when I did get there, I probably waited 30 minutes from the time that I entered the building to actually take the test. At the testing center that I tested at, it's a testing center that has like multiple medical professions getting licenses there. So there wasn't just RNs, there was other departments of people taking exams there as well at the same exact time. So it got a little hectic. There was a lot of people in the waiting room, and you have to go through this whole process before you actually sit down to take your exam. When you arrive, I would recommend only bringing in two things: your license or your passport or whatever you're using for your photo ID, and then your car keys, or if somebody drops you off, just your license. I chose to leave my phone and my wallet in my car. My car was locked. I felt like I was in a safe environment and I wasn't worried about it. And I also have like a little lockbox in my car as like an extra set of protection. I did see people bringing in their phones and their wallets, and just when you store it, it's a different process than what I experienced, which I'll talk about as well. I walked in there and the woman at the front desk was helping somebody else. She gave me this piece of paper to look over. It was just sort of like the exam rules of not discussing anything on the exam, expectations, how long the test is. So you have exactly 5 hours to complete the test, and you can get a minimum of 75 questions or a maximum of 145 questions. You are allotted different breaks throughout the test. Actually, the test itself will like go black. It totally freaked me out. And it'll say, it's time for your break. Would you like to take it? And something to know is that these breaks do contribute to your 5 hours of test taking. So if you do take like a little walk for 10 minutes or use the restroom, the clock is still ticking. I read over that piece of paper, and then she called me up and then just stated a couple more rules and policies about the exam. I think she asked for my license because I think she took a copy of it, and then she asked what all I had on me, if I had any like food or beverages, if I had my phone. And this is where, if I had my phone or my wallet or any extra things like that, they give you this bag that seals like permanently. So you put all of your belongings in there, but because I just had my keys, I didn't have to do that. So you put all your belongings in there, and then you put it in a locker where you get a little key from. And at the end of your test, once it's completely over, you then have to grab that sealed bag and hand it to them, and they have to open it up for you to retrieve the rest of your items. Throughout the test, you actually hold on to your photo ID because you're going to be using that to leave the testing room if you need to use the restroom or you want to get some water or anything like that. So I put my keys in the cubby and grabbed the little locker key. She scanned both of my palms, and I think that was the extent of that part. I walked into another little hallway area Granted, this is just what it was like at the building that I was testing at. And then there was another employee there, and she kind of gave me a rundown on the test, again talking about the breaks. She made me do like a little pat down where we actually did it ourselves. We just like patted ourselves down. She took my license. She also scanned my palm. Oh, another thing is I brought in blue light glasses to have while I was taking the test because I feel like it really actually does help when you're staring at a computer screen for that long. And she had me take them off, and then they kind of like put it on this little spinner thing and look at it. I don't know what they're looking for, but that happened right before we entered like the testing room because it's closed off with the door. She gave me this laminated sheet of like graph paper. I hear a lot of people referring to it as like a whiteboard, which is really what it's essentially like. It was a decent size, but it was graph paper because it had a bunch of little blocks, and then she gave me like a little Expo pen. Basically, that is your paper to use while you're testing, but you're not allowed to erase it. So by chance you actually use that whole piece of paper, if you need more, you just raise your hand and she'll bring you another one. You're never supposed to erase it, and then they just keep that. And I don't know what they do with that. So that's just a little heads up for that. That's kind of what you have as like your note taking. And I actually did use it throughout the test. I found it to be helpful just to like jot down stuff as I was answering questions. I also tallied like how many select all that apply I got and things like that. She gave me the whole run through, and then we walked over to the computer that I tested at. And basically you have your own little private cubby. Can't really see anybody beside you. It was like a decently open room, and there was a pair of headphones on both sides. One was connected to the computer, so I'm assuming that is for an audio question if you got that, which I didn't. There was another pair which were noise canceling headphones, which I actually did use for a good portion of the test, which was really nice, honestly. Especially when you're sitting in that room, like all sorts of noises are heightened when people are leaving the room, coughing, sneezing. You're already anxious as hell. Anything you can do to reduce that, I definitely recommend that. I was not allowed to bring anything back there, water, nothing like that. I only had my license, the little key to my locker, and then just my paper and my pen to use. She'll log in onto the computer, and then the test will basically start. So you'll have a little timer in the corner telling you how much time has passed, and then you'll have like a little question counter telling you what number you're on. The first thing I did before I started my exam was in like big fat letters on my paper, I wrote safety. And that's because talking to anybody about this exam, everybody's number one piece of advice, number one thing that they say to you is that this is a safety exam. I figured that anytime I was looking at a question and I felt stumped, I would obviously look down, I would see the word safety, and it would just be a good reminder that what would I do in this situation to be the safest nurse possible? And I really feel like that helped me get through the exam, because regardless of how much you study, you're just not gonna know everything all night. You're just not gonna know all the words. You are just not going to have had those experiences to know the answers to all of those questions. My exam began, and then probably on question 30, I had to use the restroom because I had checked a Celsius prior to coming in. I am a big advocate for taking breaks throughout your exam. Sometimes literally just getting a sip of water or just moving around for a minute and coming back to a question, you can see it with more clarity and like answer it appropriately. Because when you're staring at a screen question after question, sometimes you just need like a little breather. To actually get up and use the restroom or take a little break, you have to raise your hand, and then somebody will come into the testing room, and you have to bring your license with you, and then you have to scan your palm to like leave the room, and then you go do what you need to do, and then you come back, you scan your palm again, she checks your license, you do another pat down, and then you can go back to your test. It's like a little bit of a process. In my head, I had assumed that if I needed a break, I could just stand up and like walk around the room or something like that, but that's not the case. You always have to raise your hand. So I just want to let you guys know about that, because that caught me off guard. It almost made me honestly like not want to get up and take a break, just because of the whole process of scanning the palms, which is really not that big of a deal, but I was like, I'm gonna run out of time or something like that. I took one break because I used the restroom at about question 30, and then my screen just went black at, I don't know what question it was, and I was so confused because I knew I wasn't at 75 yet, and it was just a little note on the screen saying it was time for a break and asking me if I wanted to take it or not, to which I didn't. I just wanted to keep going. I told myself by question 75, 76, I would take another break and recoup. I actually got to question 75 and my exam shut off. And obviously I feel like that's what everybody is hoping and praying for, because why would you want to do more questions? Like, you want to do the least amount of questions and just get the damn thing over with. But it was also scary. With that being said, I felt like I had gotten the last question correct. Like, I was 90% sure. So I felt good that it shut off after a question I felt like I got correct, but I just wasn't sure how to feel. In total, it took me around 2 hours to complete the 75 questions. I'm like not normally a slower test taker. I think I was averaging like 30 seconds when I was using UWorld answering questions, but I made myself slow down. I probably reread the questions at least 3 to 6 times. There was a question I truly stared at for 10 or 15 minutes. I'm not kidding you, because I was so frustrated with it. It was a multiple choice question. And it was a pretty basic question and I just couldn't figure it out, and I didn't want to skip past it just because I wanted to get it over with and like move on to the next question, because you obviously want to get them correct and right. So I just kept staring at it until I mustered up the courage to pick an answer that seemed the most reasonable. And of course I Googled it after the NCLEX exam because I was so stumped. To add on to that, what I want to say is that if you're anything like me, you're probably asking everybody and their mom that has taken the NCLEX, how long did it take you? How many questions did you get? Like, what resources did you use to study? Just trying to get a hold on what the hell you're in for and like how to prepare. I had talked to people that told me they were in and out in 45 minutes. I had talked to people that were in there for 4 hours. Everybody is completely different, but the one piece of advice I could give you is to not rush the exam. Like, you have 5 hours to answer 145 questions. That is a lot of time, and it can seem very overwhelming and scary, and of course you probably do not want to be there for 5 hours, but there is no excuse to not take your time and reread through the questions, because sometimes you can miss something, especially when you're just answering question after question. It's just so easy to maybe overlook a word, overlook what the question is actually asking you. Just a quick little thing, for example, something that we have learned in a program our school put on for us. It was a HESI Live, and the teacher, she was giving us questions to like trick us and show us what to focus on in the questions to figure out what they're asking. And something as simple as an S at the end of a word to make it plural literally changed the answer, and that is so easy to overlook. I just really want to touch on that. Take your time. I think that that really benefited me. Really read through all of the answers, reread the question, take your sweet time, and try to make it in this weird way fun and enjoyable. The morning when I left to take my NCLEX, at the time I was like, Mom, you are crazy. But I kind of like that she said it, because it did give me a different perspective on it. She said just have fun with it, and if you look at it as something that you can tackle and you can do and try to make it fun or enjoyable, I promise you that you can get through it. If I can get through it, you can get through it. Another thing that I heard recently, I've actually known this for a while, but I reheard it on a podcast, basically talking about the feelings that your body goes through when you're nervous and excited. It's like the same set of responses and reactions, except excitement is attached to like a positive note and being nervous is sort of attached to like a negative note. So if you can get control over your thinking, because you are going to be nervous. I don't know anybody that wasn't nervous taking this exam because so much weighs on it. If you can just grasp that you can do it and take a deep breath and try to make it enjoyable. I know that sounds so weird, but I'm being for real. Like, try to look at it as like a fun experience, because I feel like that helped me, and that helped me breathe through the questions that I was staring at. Like, what the heck is this asking me? Or this select all that apply with a word that I had never seen before, heard of. I had no idea. You can get through it, I promise you. At the end of my test, I actually was tallying, because I wanted to share with you guys how many select all that apply that I got. So I got 25 out of 75 questions. I got no medication math questions. I did get 2 EKG strip questions, and then that was it. So after it shut off, it gives you an option at the end to answer more questions for future test takers. They don't count against you. And to be honest, I had every intention of looking at that so I could see what people could expect for the 2023 NCLEX, but I was over it. I think I did one, and then I raised my hand and I asked if I could just skip past it and get out of this and get out of there. And she's like, oh yeah, absolutely. And so we ended it. I turned in my piece of paper and my little pen. She scanned my palm again. I went to the front, opened up my locker, got my keys, said goodbye, and peaced the heck out. And that was the end of my experience there. I left the building, went back to my car, took a nice old deep breath, and just kind of told myself, this is out of my hands now. I did the absolute best that I could do, and whatever happens is going to happen, and it's the way that it's supposed to work out. And I'm just appreciative to have even gotten to this point in my nursing career and gotten to this experience. And so I just told myself to have faith, and I was going to try to relax for the rest of the day and hope for the best. So that was the testing experience. I had tested at 8 a.m. and got out around 10 o'clock. And just from talking to my friends who had previously tested, they all found out the same day if they passed. It seemed like that was a common theme. I think it honestly depends on the state that you live in, how quickly they are getting those results back to us nursing students or us graduated nurses. I had an idea that I was gonna find out the same day, but also with it being a Friday when I tested, I was thinking maybe it would go into the weekend and I wouldn't find out until Monday, which would have been absolutely horrible. I kept checking my email to see if I got a notification. And lo and behold, I actually found out from my brother because he kept checking the State Board of Nursing and saw my name and my license. And then I called my mom because I wasn't on my phone at the time. He said, congratulations to the second RN in the family. Anyways, that was so relieving. I probably found out at about 1-ish. I don't remember exactly the time, but it was a couple hours after. So it was overall a pretty quick process of me taking the test and finding out that I passed. So I am thankful for that. This video is looking like it is going to be a lot longer than I initially anticipated. So I hope I'm giving you guys good information. Now I want to get into the studying portion, exactly what I did and how I studied and all of that good stuff. I want to say something that might not be a popular opinion. So at the end of my nursing program, we have something called our IP, which is our integrative practicum. And that is where you get placed with a registered nurse and you do a ton of clinical hours. It's truly where you learn, I mean, so much. I feel like I learned more in my IP than I did the whole time I was in nursing school. So it was in my last term of nursing school. It was over the span of 10 weeks. We did 220 hours. It may be called something different in your program. This is basically where you get the opportunity to do all of your clinical hours, and just such an amazing experience, honestly. In my program, we had the option to do our IP in different specialties. Granted, there was a limited number of spots in certain specialties, so people had to interview and then the department would choose you if they thought that you were a good fit. There were students that did their whole IP in the OR, in labor and delivery, in the ICU, in the PCU, on the medical floor, in the surgical floor, and then in the ER, which is where I got to do mine at. And I feel like it's important where you choose to do your IP at. Like, it really benefited me being in the ER because I got to practice so many skills, and it really benefited me when I was answering questions on the NCLEX, because I do feel like the test was basic knowledge, stuff that you learned in the very beginning of nursing school that you can almost overlook when you're studying and dive into things that are just way outside of our spectrum as nurses, but you just feel like you need to know everything. What I'm saying is that if I had chosen to do my IP in the OR and got picked for that because I wanted to work there, which is really awesome. It's kind of like a catch-22, because if you do your IP in a department that you want to work in, you get to know people and you probably have a better chance of getting hired there. But then I feel like if I would have been in the OR for my entire IP, I wouldn't have gotten to see nearly as many things that I got to see in the ER or on the medical or the surgical floor with all of the skills and things like that. So I hope what I'm saying is making sense. What I'm saying is just kind of keep that in mind. When you do your IP, you're getting so many clinical hours and so much experience there that's really going to help you when you are taking the NCLEX. Don't be upset if you get the medical or the surgical. I know that's kind of like where people got placed if they didn't get into a specialty, but that is also such a wonderful area to be at, to hone in on your skills as a nurse and to really implement everything that we have learned. So I just wanted to touch on that. I hope that made sense. I feel like in my head it did, but as I was saying it out loud, I don't think that it did. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to comment down below. I will be happy to answer them. So my studying routine, I promise I'm taking this seriously, you guys. I have my notebook here. I have the dates written down that I wanted to talk about. I graduated June 10th. That was like my whole graduation day. And then I received my authorization to test code in my email June 24th. So it was exactly 2 weeks. I know we were all anxiously awaiting for that email. So as soon as I got that, I picked my test day and location, and I actually picked it for August 2nd, but then I had some personal things going on and really wasted a lot of time and did not study, and so I moved it back or forward a couple of days to August 5th, which I regret doing in hindsight, but it's okay, it all happened, just to give myself some more time and like make myself feel at more ease about my test date. I feel like I really didn't begin fully studying until July 1st. July 1st all the way up until the day before my test, August 4th. So approximately an entire month, I really did study for that entire month. Granted, at the end, like the last 2 weeks or the week right before my test, I was going a lot harder than I was before. Like I was practicing a lot more questions, honestly studying for like 8 hours a day, whereas in the beginning it might have been like 3 hours, but I was still studying and learning information every single day for that entire month. I can truly say that. Studying and the resources that you use can be so overwhelming because there are so many resources. We have access to so many things at our fingertips, and it can just seem overwhelming and seem like a lot. That's why I think it's really important to honestly just stick with a couple of resources. Don't overdo it. It's going to get too complicated. You're going to feel overwhelmed, and then you're going to feel like you don't know anything, and then you're going to start to doubt yourself, and then it's just going to spiral out of hand. Initially in my head, I wanted to use UWorld, I wanted to use Archer, I wanted to listen to all the Mark Klemek lectures, I wanted to watch like all of the simple nursing videos. I have a list here. And then I wanted to completely go over a study guide by your nursing educator. Oh, I also had the Saunders textbook. It's like the NCLEX RN Saunders book. It's such a great book. I wanted to go through the entire book of that and take notes. I also, what else do I have in here? I also wanted to go through my HESI live review book. I think every nursing program does something different to prepare their students, and so we had to take 3 HESI tests at the end of my program, like as an exit exam, and then we had a HESI live review with this amazing teacher. It was 3 full days where she gave us so many amazing test taking strategies, and just we learned so much from her, and I had a full notebook from that. So that was another thing I wanted to go through. And if you're catching what I'm saying, that's like 6-7 resources. I put them all in my NCLEX binder, and I had a full intention of doing that, but I'm just gonna be honest with you, there's just not enough time. There's literally not enough time to do that, and you're just going to get overwhelmed. You need to have a strategy of how you're going to tackle information, and I think the biggest thing is truly practicing questions, getting in the rhythm of practicing NCLEX style questions and just creating like the stamina to be able to sit there on the NCLEX day and answer 145 questions and not lose it, not feel completely drained in the middle of it, not be able to read the words on the page. Because I know when I first started practicing questions, after 30, I was like over it. But after time, as you start getting used to answering questions, you can get so much better at sitting for longer intervals and answering a ton of questions. With that being said, I truly used 3 resources to study for the NCLEX. Number 1 was the Mark Klemek lectures, number 2 was UWorld, and number 3 was the Simple Nursing YouTube channel. I'm gonna go through each of them individually. I don't know if you guys have heard of Mark Klemek before. He teaches these NCLEX review classes, and he had these 12 lectures that used to be completely available to the public to listen to. They were on Spotify, they were on YouTube, and now they have just disappeared. I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if there was like copyright issues or what, but it's so unfortunate because they were so helpful. I really think that played a big part in me passing the NCLEX. And I hate to say that because I can't give you guys these lectures, but what I can give you is he has a website and you can sign up for his NCLEX review. I haven't looked into that. I know he teaches it and I think he has other employees that teach it. You have to pay for it. I believe they have it online. I'm not too sure about that. But there are also ways to find notes that prior students had taken in his NCLEX review, and that's what I did. I would follow along with his lectures. He went over basically everything. He went over pharmacology, he went over labor and delivery, prioritization and delegation, mental health, everything under the moon. I found notes online of students that had typed them up, and I just followed along with each lecture. I highlighted certain key points, made my own notes, and really just tried to absorb as much from his lecture as possible. I will try to find those notes for you guys because I feel like that is totally safe. These are notes that a student had made, and if I can find them, I will have them linked down below in the description box, and I suggest reading them, going through them. Lab values, another really important thing that he touched on in his lectures that really helped me during my exam. So throughout my whole month of studying, I would split up his lectures kind of throughout the weeks, and I would listen to them when I was like taking Camper on a walk, and then I would re-listen to them again when I was actually with my NCLEX binder highlighting and making notes. So I listened to them several times to really get that information in my head. That's one resource I use. I also purchased UWorld actually right before I graduated nursing school. So I purchased the 3-month subscription. I don't remember how much it was. I also got 2 self-assessments with that. So UWorld, for me, I think it had around 2,100 questions, and I was doing anywhere from 50 to 200 questions a day. It honestly just depended on the day. I always tried to do at least 50. You can get an app on your phone so that if you're like waiting in line for something or you don't have access to your computer, you can still be practicing questions on your phone because there's no excuse. We always have our phone on us, unfortunately. And something that worked for me personally is instead of just mixing all of the questions up and just doing them at random, I did it by each subject. So UWorld has like a pharmacology section. They have like a maternal and newborn, child health, adult health, just several different sections with different numbers of questions in them. And I went through each category and did all the questions, and then I moved on to another category, and I really feel like that helped me learn the category as a whole rather than just having a question in pharmacology and then the next question be in adult health, and just kind of have it all scattered. I do see how that could be helpful though, because the NCLEX is completely scattered. So I'm just saying what worked for me, and I just want to share that. As I was answering these questions, I was taking notes on them. The one thing that's awesome about UWorld is UWorld has great rationales. So you answer a question, and not only do you see why this was the answer to that question, but you also get information on the other answers. It's just such a great resource to learn information. I truly feel like it umbrellas like everything that you need to know for the NCLEX. It gets you used to answering questions. There's a ton of select all that apply on UWorld, and I know that can seem initially just so scary and difficult. Once you get to the end of finishing your UWorld question bank, I feel like you're just like not intimidated by select all that apply anymore because you've done so many of them. So I was taking notes, and what I did was basically if I got something right and I felt 100% confident in it, I didn't take a note on it, because in the beginning I was trying to take notes on everything and that was just too much. It wasn't really conductive with the amount of time that I had. So I made an effort to always take notes on anything that I wasn't sure of or anything I literally had no idea about. So for example, even if I got a question right because I guessed really well or like I kind of knew, whatever I didn't fully understand, I made a note of it in my binder, and then I tried to reread all of those notes I had at the end of using UWorld and before I took my NCLEX. I think it turned out to be like 150 pieces of like college ruled paper in my binder for UWorld. I had it divided into the different sections. I feel like that really helped. Regardless of if you even go through and reread the notes you take, just the action of writing stuff down, it just is like another way of putting the information in your head. Reading it, writing it down, you just want to do as much as you can. That's why I really like podcasts or YouTube videos, because being able to visually see something and hear it, it just facilitates all the more way of information to stay in your head and for you to really, really learn. With that being said, I 100% recommend UWorld. I think it is completely worth the money that you pay for it. And if anything, you learn so much from the rationales and it gets you into the mode of practicing questions and answering them. So I think it's truly a great resource. I did 2 self-assessments. I did one in the middle of July and then I did one at the end of July just to kind of see where I stood. My scores were 64% and then 66%, which were both a very high chance of passing. Although I don't feel like that is like an accurate determiner of if you're going to pass or not. I know people that have gotten way less and did really great. I know people that have gotten higher than me and then also not passed. I feel like take that with a grain of salt. If anything, it just gave me a little bit of like a confidence boost, which I think is 50% of taking the NCLEX. Like 50% of it is your knowledge and knowing how to answer questions, and then the other 50% is getting control over your mind and your anxiety and all the stakes that are at risk here, and just believing in yourself and being confident with your choices and your answers. I do feel like that's like 50% of the exam, honestly, which makes sense because as a nurse, you need to be confident with what you're doing because patients will know and see if you are not, and they will be freaked out. And the last resource I used was Simple Nursing on YouTube, which is completely free. I know they do have a website where you can pay money for access to more videos and questions and all things like that. I never did any of that. I used Simple Nursing mainly for pharmacology. They have really great in-depth pharmacology videos that I promise you I was using their tricks. I heard him in my head when I was taking the exam, because I got a good amount of pharmacology, which was totally my weakness, and it found my weakness and just went in on it. But I couldn't recommend Simple Nursing enough. I feel like if you're in nursing school or finished with it, there's no way you haven't heard of it. And if you haven't, well, you're welcome. Your mind is going to be blown. So I watched a majority of his pharmacology videos and I took notes too in areas that I was weak at. I really try to focus on like cardiac medications, mental health medications, things like that. He also has a really amazing EKG video where he goes through 9 different EKG strips, and that helped me. I watched that several times. So that's a resource I think is amazing, and it's free, and it's a video, it's more interactive, it's fun, and you can rewatch it as many times as you want. And it's also very captivating. And I think it's important to have this balance and switch it up when you are studying, because I definitely would get tired of answering questions on UWorld and just reading and reading. And so it'd be nice to take a break, even though it wasn't, but it felt like it was a break because I was just watching a video and learning information that way. I feel like that really helped by switching it up and learning in different styles to help retain information. I can't really touch on any of the other resources like Archer, or I know the Saunders book is absolutely great. I can only share what worked for me, and because you do typically have a limited amount of time to study and take the NCLEX, and you also just want to get it done with and out of the way, because gosh, are you stressed or what leading up to that day? It is just, you can't focus on anything else. You're dreaming about the NCLEX. It is such a weird thing that I feel like nobody understands. To summarize, I was never an amazing student in nursing school. I had no healthcare experience prior. I have only worked in customer service. I feel like we're all on an even playing field. Like if you can graduate from nursing school, you have the ability to learn knowledge and know the basics, and we're all even. Like you did it. If you graduated and you're able to take the NCLEX, you can pass the NCLEX. You can do it. You just have to believe in yourself. Lastly, I just want to reiterate how important I think it is to study the basics. It is so easy when you're studying to get wrapped up in diving deep into pathophysiology of a certain diagnosis and understanding that on a cellular level and this or that. And yeah, you probably had to do that in school, but I think it's important to take a step back and just remember the basics and remember that this is a safety exam. I'm going out on a whim here, but we take this exam and they already know that we're competent enough because we did graduate from nursing school. They just want to know that you can critically think in a situation and make the right decision to be the safest nurse that you can be for yourself and for your patient. I had so many questions that felt basic to me. They were so basic that they were almost tricky because I didn't study up on this or that. I wasn't even thinking about it. So go back to your basics, your skills, your Foley catheters, your IVs, your NG tubes, your blood administration, your insulins. How are you going to be the safest nurse? And just remember that each and every time you are answering a question. That is all I have for you guys. I know this video was a lot longer than I was thinking, but I really hope that has been insightful, has answered maybe some questions that you have. And seriously, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to comment down below. I will be happy to answer everything that I can because I know how scary it is taking the NCLEX. I think a big thing for me was knowing if I didn't pass it, which by the way is totally fine. I think it's like an 85–80% pass rate. I'm not entirely sure, which means there's people that don't pass it, and that doesn't make you any less of a nurse than anybody else. I just want to say that. Or if you get 100 questions or 145 questions, there's so many other factors that are going on with each person personally, and everybody's test is obviously completely different, and just do not beat yourself up and know that you can do this. As I was saying, I think something that was weighing really heavy on me is knowing that you can't retake the NCLEX for 45 days. And I had a job lined up, and I think the biggest thing I was thinking of was financially. That's another month and a half of not making money, being stressed out, and it was just totally adding to my anxiety, and it just was a recipe for a disaster. So get control over your mind. Don't feed into the self-doubt. Know that you can do this. Know that you are capable. You are amazing. And also, it's amazing that you're choosing to work in this profession, and just believe in yourself. Like, walk into that testing center knowing that it's going to be amazing, that you're going to have fun with it, and that you can honestly do it. If I can do it, I truly believe that you can do it too. It's about your mindset. You got this. Believe in yourself because I believe in you. Thank you guys for watching this video and hanging out with me. I am so excited for the future and what is to come, and sharing my first week of work with you guys, some scrub hauls. I just have so many ideas, and I'm so excited to continue sharing this experience. So I want to end it on that note. To any of you guys that have the NCLEX coming up, you got this. You can do this, I promise you. Believe in yourself, it's about damn time. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye! Also haven't known Camper was here by my side the entire time. He's such a good son. I love you.